If you know how to make melodies, but you struggle with making them sound more interesting, so let's say you understand the basic concepts of music theory, but for some reason your progressions and melodies and harmonies still just kind of come out sounding boring, I've got the perfect method for you. In this video, we're going to go over my method for turning boring chord progressions into amazing melodies. Without too much more talking, let's get into it. All right, so the first thing we're going to want to do is just start with some pretty solid chords. So again, we're kind of making the assumption that you know a little bit about what's going on with chords, but just in case you don't, we'll just go over how to build one of my favorite chords really quickly. So we'll just build, I love the key of C sharp, and we'll move that up. Maybe one more. Yeah. And we'll just start in FL keys because it's just a basic piano that we can use. Root note will be C minor, and then we'll go up 2 spaces, put down that E, go up 3 more spaces from that note, put down that G sharp minor chord, right? So something I really like to do, especially when I'm feeling a little bit more like I want to make an emotional melody, is you can make a complementing 7th major chord to any basic minor triad like this by literally just coming 3 notes down from that root note and placing this note. So right here it would be A. And so now this is an A major chord, but it's an A major 7th because it's got that 4th harmonizing note there. It's not the correct way to say that, but it doesn't matter. So let's go ahead and take a listen to that. So something that I didn't get to talk about that I did want to mention as we kind of slide into this second part, which is spicing up the chords, is that we used a little bit of dissonance, or you might hear in other tutorials or in even some of my tutorials on my first channel, labeling it or addressing it as the half steps. And it's just a really good way to make your chord progression sound more tense. It doesn't always have to be like that dark trap repetitive vibe either. So we go from this major chord into a dissonant minor. I'm pretty sure that's not the right way to say that, but that's just the way like I understand it in my brain. Spice it up even more. Let's see if a key change would be dope. I don't usually like things hitting on that 1 octave range in FL Studio particularly. It sounds a little muddy pretty much in any instrument, so I'll just bring that up. I like that. So another way that you can kind of spice this up before we bring it into the actual instrument we'll use to build out our melody, because right, we're still kind of just designing the progression and building a little bit of melody into it. We can make these into broken chords. Now, broken chords can be conceptualized as arpeggio as well, but it doesn't necessarily always have to be like this systematized on grid kind of like robotic arpeggio where it's like something like this. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be that. It's just the idea that breaking up the chord kind of just gives it a different character than it would if you just played it straight on the grid. Like even just strumming all the notes, which we could do, is not necessarily the same thing as what we're going for, which is a kind of like almost developing a little bit of melody just by breaking up the chords. That's cool. I really like that. And then we can also talk about another thing, which is chord inversion or chord voicing, or you can even get really fancy with it and call it borrowed chords, but we won't get fancy with it. The kind of main idea here is that you're just going to move certain notes in your chords up or down an octave to kind of give it a different character. But I don't necessarily want to do that just because that's not what I'm feeling right now. So let's do something like that. So now we can get into sound selection, which is the 3rd step in this process. Step 1 was just making sure you start with some kind of solid chord progression foundation. Start with just some good chords that you understand. I spiced that up into a bunch of different chords, but having that fundamental understanding of how a few chords fit together will be really good. So I'll toss up one really good tutorial for that for my main channel right now, and then I'll just link a bunch more down below so you can check them out. So I'm gonna go to one of my favorite VSTs right now and probably freaking ever, decent sampler. And it is, I don't know if I already said it's free, but it is free. This pack, for example, is free and it's super fire. So we'll just grab something in here. And sound selection is so key. So what I'm thinking before I even get into it, and you don't necessarily want to go into it with a plan, but once you get started, it's important to kind of follow a theme, right? So if you're gonna go acoustic, for example, so like guitars, flutes, pianos could kind of fit however. So it's not everything fits into a specific mold. And again, there's no rules at the end of the day, but you do want to have like a kind of theme that your melody is gonna follow. So I'm gonna mute those bass notes. Cool, so then let's just add some bass. We already did that with these bass notes, so we can just take this, boom, copy that in. I was overthinking it with that lead melody. We can literally just duplicate that and then have it be the same motif, but just match the progression. Okay, cool. So now let's get into the next section, which is mixing, and we'll go through this pretty quickly because the only two things that matter in mixing when I mix is leveling and equalization. It's pretty much the only things you need. The only other one would be like stereo stuff like delay, reverb, chorus if you feel like getting fancy. So the first thing we want to do is kind of find that pad. Let's just start by EQing some low end. It's a little bright. Don't want to take out too much of the mid-range. The magic is in the mid-range. Some widen delay is, I just use that pretty much every time I'm doing a melody. And then reverb, pretty standard stuff. It's already sounding good. And that's pretty much the stack I'll use every time. Just EQ to make it fit with everything else. Delay and reverb. And then I'll just play with the macros. Not even the macros, the mix settings really of the delay and reverb to get it where I want it to be. All right, so I'm just gonna head over to the 14 centerfold drum kit and I'm gonna grab some mixer presets. More so just for mastering right now. Let's just add a soft clipper on there. Cool. And then we'll route everything through that in a second. Ooh, can I get away with just the radio EQ? Maybe bring that gain down a little bit. Okay, so based on this EQ, it's really hitting, well, wherever this radio EQ is allowing it to max out. But let's say it's like between, we don't have to, let's say, we can literally just see it. 340 to let's just call it 4400. But it's really, because of the way the shape of this radio EQ is going, or telephone EQ, however you want to call it, it's like 2K, which makes sense. So let's try to EQ around that just so that that bell harmony kind of shines a little bit more. So we can take this band and dip just a little bit more. So right around 2K, just dip it just a little bit. Just dip it just a little bit so that can shine just a little bit more without too much clashing. Just a simple EQ. You could literally just make this. So now we're gonna get into a little bit of structuring, and this is gonna be fun because we're gonna get to add some spice into this as well. But the first thing we need to do is just do some basic structuring, because I personally usually won't have all the melodies hitting like that ever. And I'm sure you could begin to notice there was a little bit of like frequency clashing anyway. One of the best mixing techniques is actually just structuring, right? Maybe same thing with this one. Okay, let's grab some textures from the centerfold drum kit, or 14 drum kit actually. And let's see. Maybe we could add like one more texture from there. Definitely. I love this texture. I'm gonna render it without the bass. Then we could like pitch that even more. So I hope you enjoyed the framework I showed you. Go ahead and get into your DAW and start using it right away. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions. Just to recap, the first thing you're going to want to do is, of course, make sure you're starting off with a solid chord progression. From there, spice it up using some kind of method such as borrowed chords, chord inversions, laying down some kind of lead melody. Sound selection is going to be your best friend. Layering good sounds that sound good together. Think in terms of themes. Make sure everything makes sense in context. Make sure you nail the mix. Go back over that part especially. That's one of the most important parts of doing anything inside of a digital audio workstation. And then of course, arrangement can help you bring this sort of flavor and character into your melody. Instead of having all the things clash together, you kind of create a story with everything. So again, I hope this was helpful. Check out the description below for the free 14 drum kit. It's the best drum kit on the internet that's not called the centerfold drum kit. That one's the best one, and you can check out the landing page below. It'll do a better job of explaining it than I ever could. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.